Hello, everybody, and welcome to another community conversation with Minds at Work. We're talking about a week after we had some extreme weather in the UK, which brought the climate crisis to headlines once more. And you may find there some of your peers, colleagues, employees feeling the impact of what's become known as climate anxiety or fear about the consequences of climate change. It's something I've been thinking about a lot, pretty much my entire life, as someone who grew up in Australia in the 80s. So I'm thrilled today to be able to welcome Adam Woodhall to our community. Adam is the founder and chief executive of Lawyers for Net Zero, the fast-growing non-profit supporting general counsels and their teams to take climate and ESG leadership. Adam is an entrepreneur, a strategy and sustainability expert, and a widely published author on energy and climate change. His initiative now has over 100 in-house lawyers committed to net zero, with many high-profile champions taking part in its impact program, including from organizations such as Standard Chartered Bank, GSK, E.ON, Nestle, and Rolls-Royce. Adam has helped to deliver climate action both with clean tech, startups, and many household names. And his mission is to support influential individuals to become impact multipliers. So welcome, Adam.
No, very nice to meet you, Lauren.
And you. Before we get started, is there anything that you would like to add to that bio? Any flavor you want to let us know about, or shall we get started?
Yes, no, well, I think the thing is just to kind of give some context. In terms of Minds at Work, I've been experiencing anxiety episodes myself for probably around about 40 years. But that isn't connected to my interest in climate environmental issues, which actually goes back about 35 years. Probably definitely connected to my interest, my anxiety sort of episodes, was that I started doing meditation. I've been pretty consistent for 30 years, and I'm still a learner with that. And actually, I've been working to help deliver climate action for about 15 years. Now, anxiety and kind of the climate crisis are fairly similar, because I think all of us would just wish they'd just go away. But actually, there's a process that we need to kind of go through for me to kind of how you sort of work with them. Very different processes, but there's something about that kind of like just can't go away, which is common to both of them. So I feel very privileged to be asked to be here, particularly because I was very lucky to be asked to be at the first Minds at Work event quite a number of years ago, and so it's great to see that it's still going strong.
Awesome. And yeah, lovely to have you with us as well. And it's really interesting to hear that you make those linkages, talk about a lot of the stuff as well that we talk about in terms of meditation and yeah. So obviously I approached you about doing this because of this term climate anxiety. What's been your experience of climate anxiety over the years?
Well, I think the most rational response to the climate crisis is to go into denial, because then you don't worry about it. So it's like, you know, somebody who's like a 40-a-day smoker and they're coughing their guts up, but they're like, I'm fine, there's no problems with me. But actually they can be quite a happy person, even though, they're not very healthy. Well, it's the same with climate deniers, actually. Arguably, that a strong reason why they're doing that is because they're in denial. So, however, if you're at some level not in denial regarding the climate crisis, anxiety about it is a perfectly rational response to the growing risks that we are seeing. And just like anxiety itself, but whatever form of anxiety, we shouldn't hide from it or ignore it, or try and kind of push it away, because that doesn't help. It's actually about how we, with both of them, how we kind of work with those the kind of like the personal anxiety and the climate anxiety, because for me, once you kind of start to come out of denial regarding it, which I probably, as I say, I started to get interested in climate and environmental issues 35 years ago. So I've been living with this kind of gathering storm for all that time. So for me, actually, it's not been as intense as it has maybe been for some people who might have just kind of like come to it in more recently, and then suddenly they've got all this information. I've been seeing it coming, and it's been gathering. But obviously, part of it is that it's like with climate anxiety, is that one feels, I can feel out of control of it all, and also there's obviously clearly a sense of impending doom. But part of it is actually the interesting thing is that like how people respond to the concept of our own mortality. Now we're all gonna die sometime, and so are our loved ones, and so's everyone actually. And so, but one of the things is like, how do we deal with that? But then the other side of that is like, for me, that has caused my sort of more kind of climate anxiety in a sense at times, is not the death of me or my loved ones. It's more the untimely death of maybe me and particularly loved ones, because actually the climate crisis predicts that if we continue in kind of kicking out greenhouse gases and also doing other ecological damage, that our sort of society's foundations will be undermined. Now, we're already starting to see that. There's quite a lot of evidence that the Syrian civil war, was in part what led to it was actually a once in 1,000-year drought, which lasted for a long time. And so then, because of insecure sort of societal situation, that society imploded into civil war. And unfortunately, I believe there's still lots of problems there. Now, but that is a real thing, because like for me is like, and I don't want that to happen. I've kind of done some work on kind of personal sort of mortality, but what I want to, when I draw my dying breath, I want to see a world that's still functioning and still got like a great societal sort of engagement going on. I don't want to see a society collapsing around me, and potentially the reason why I'm dying is because it's actually collapsing around me. So now I have a natural sort of personality that thinks very big. So that's kind of quite a big thing. But I think so different people's anxiety will reside or regarding climate at different levels. But I think a lot of it will be in that sense of feeling out of control and of some form of impending doom around it.
So maybe we should go really quite big then, big picture, and just talk about, why is this happening? What actually is going on with the climate that might be making people experience this impending doom?
Well, obviously the challenge is that fossil fuels, the main greenhouse gas, aren't a problem in themselves. The problem is that we are using so many of them, and our society has functionally got addicted to the use of fossil fuels and other greenhouse gas production, such as even cows burping and farting. Is a part of the greenhouse gas, and lots of people like their burgers. So, but the thing is it's not that eating meat is a bad thing. It's not that flying, to Australia, in your case, is a bad thing. It's the fact that we've got lots and lots of people eating meat, flying to Australia, doing whatever it is to create those things. Now, the thing is that, and one of the other challenges, though, in society is that what the societal response has been largely that the best way you as an individual can interact with the climate crisis is to do your bit. But the thing is if you're a mindful person, you'll kind of recognize that doing the recycling and changing the light bulbs and making sure that you switch off the lights, it's a tiny thing. And actually, unfortunately, even if we all turned off the lights, did the recycling, etc., it would not be enough, because actually there's so many other things which cause the climate crisis beyond just those things that we have personal interaction with.
Mm.
So I think part of the problem is the disparity between also the fact that we're saying we should do something about it, and then when very well-meaning people, which include people such as Al Gore, who did The Inconvenient Truth, does a movie which came out in 2006, which very much motivated me, and at the end of that movie, its main suggestion was car share, turn off lights, etc., etc. So the thing is actually there's a very big gap between that. So that gap is like, oh my God, well, I can't do anything. I've got no way of interacting with this. So that feels very heavy. That I think for most people, which is why in some ways I decided 15 plus years ago to get into taking climate action.
Sure. And I think that's a really nice segue into the big question, what can we actually do, beyond the recycling and the, reducing use of single-use plastics and all these things that we should all be doing. What can we actually do?
Yeah, well, one of the things I'm going to assume that the sort of person that will be listening to this, watching this, you're probably already doing quite a lot of personal eco actions like the ones we've just talked about, and it's great. Keep on doing them. It feels good. I still feel good when I do the recycling, no doubt. Mm-hmm. And what it is the basis of Lawyers for Net Zero. It's kind of the theory of change that we have comes from the understanding that action is what drives belief, rather than the other way around. Most people think that if the way to kind of solve the climate crisis is you need to get everybody believing that climate change is happening, and then everybody will then take action based on that. Now, that's what a lot of sort of initiatives have been doing for the last 20 plus years, and it's not really moved the dial that much. It's not that it's not done anything, it's just not moved the dial much. But actually, there's lots of evidence. If you get people doing things which are meaningful, which are above and beyond, then that actually, just as long as it's kind of, they start off not too ambitious, so then you don't fall over because you've just not achieved it. Don't try and be Prime Minister of the UK and because you want to change the green policies. It's not going to happen overnight. It's start something and then build fast as you can. So the sorts of things that you can look at is obviously classic activism, whether that's Friends of the Earth, Greenpeace, or if you're feeling particularly tasty, Extinction Rebellion. But then there's also looking in at how it could be part of, if not your whole job. There's a good website called Climate Base that you could go to, or you could Google. There's lots of things. I did it myself. Google climate volunteering. There's some good sites out there about how you can volunteer around things. But then the thing that where kind of Lawyers for Net Zero comes in is that I'd noted that for many people actually within their day jobs, if you are a kind of a trainee primary school teacher, or you're a bin man or something like that, your job, you've not got that much necessarily that you could do different. But if you've got some authority and influence in your organization, you could actually do something meaningful to get your organization to change things. And again, this is more than just encouraging your colleagues to turn lights off. So yes, it's good to get your green committee at work going. But this is what I'm talking about here, is that if you're in the finance team, it's asking questions about how we're spending our money. Are we using renewable energy, et cetera, et cetera. But then also if you're in procurement, what we're spending our money on, if you're the chief executive or et cetera. But then Lawyers for Net Zero, where we came from is that in-house lawyers, which is our focus. So we only look at the lawyers that work in the big organizations like corporations, government, et cetera. Is how can you use your influence to support the transition, the climate transition in that way? And so the core of our work in our impact program is what we call our champions groups, which is those champions groups. They're small groups, individuals, and the key thing is it's focused on action. We don't actually talk about the climate crisis, the challenge. And what actually the feedback that we get, and it was only this year that we first started delivering the full program. Last year was piloting, and the feedback has been fantastic because people have felt really empowered to do stuff and create that change, which has been, wonderful to see. Because, when it comes down to it, so the best antidote to the climate anxiety is to do something meaningful but don't overstress yourself. Don't get anxious because you're not doing enough yet. Just keep on doing. So hopefully that sort of makes sense.
It does, yeah. Which maybe if I just ask one more question then, Adam, which I think that does lead us really nicely into this. There, as you said, there is so much to do that it can become quite overwhelming. It can be really disheartening reading doom and gloom news, but you still want to feel that empowered to take action side of things. How do you stay informed, stay productive, and share information meaningfully?
Yeah, so I think the key thing is that it's it's the balance between doom scrolling or doing something. So one of the things is obviously, and you want to stay informed. So but I try not to, like, what I think is important is to know how serious it is, and it is extremely serious. And unfortunately, the bad news is for the audience, it is probably worse than you think it is. But humans are freaking clever. If we're clever enough to create this catastrophe unintentionally, then we're definitely clever enough with intentionality to get ourselves out of it. But we need to work together on this. So the key thing is that obviously you need to understand about, the heat wave that happened last week, do some research on it, but only so much. And, maybe create some boundaries around when you're going to do it, how you're going to do it. But the other thing, the two things that I'd look at is, and they're related, is look into the solutions. One of the most important things that the media really struggles to do, and this is, it's not individuals' fault, and it's not even the media, it's a cultural thing, is the media loves a doom-laden story. But what the media isn't so good at is looking at the fact that actually all the solutions we need for virtually all the climate issues we have been tried, tested, and delivered somewhere in the world on a consistent basis. So all we need to do is basically make a societal choice to change from, for example, using fossil fuels to using renewables, or etc., or how we do land management, or how we eat food, or how we how we make sure we're not like disposing of loads of food. That's good. And so if there's one website I'd highly recommend people go look at, is an amazing website called Project Drawdown. So that's Project Drawdown, brilliant. And then also just try and find successes that have been happening. Another great website is Positive News, which I actually helped out a few years ago. And then I think the final thing is just, just ask yourself some questions about, in a sense, who can you talk to about this? Don't try and keep it in yourself. Part of what I do is I'm always talking to people about this, and it feels as though action is doing stuff. And then obviously the final question is, ask yourself, how can I start to take some meaningful action?
Great stuff. What a wonderful place to leave it on. Any final thoughts for us, Adam, before we let you get on with your day?
Well, if people want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to continue the conversation with people. Find just Adam Woodhall. You can follow Lawyers for Net Zero. But the main thing is, do your, and one of the things, obviously, with all of this, if this is something that you are, really experiencing really dark thoughts, obviously talk to people about it. Definitely talk to a professional. This is more, this conversation obviously is aimed at people who are, it's worrying them, but it's not got dark. And if it's worrying you, then my recommendation is get out there, do something. If that doesn't work for you, try something new. And you'll get into your flow eventually. If you've got enough desire to get into the flow of doing something meaningful, you'll find it, and then you will be part of the solution, and that will massively help with any anxiety you're experiencing about climate.